Okay guys, so this video is going to hopefully clarify and get you to hopefully better understand how trig functions work within the coordinate system. Okay, so if we take a general right triangle with angle theta here, and the radius is 1, this would make it fit within the unit circle, right? So if our unit is 1, okay, in other words, the radius would therefore be 1. This right here would be the center of the circle. Okay. This point out here, of course, would correspond to some point along our unit circle like so. Long story short, if I asked you to do cosine theta, isn't cosine theta going to be the adjacent side over the hypotenuse? So we simply get x over 1. In other words, in a unit circle, x equals cosine of theta, okay? So that's why with the unit circle, guys, whenever you see an x coordinate, really it's equivalent to the cosine of that given angle theta every time. Likewise, if you are asked to figure out what sine of theta is, well, go back to our general triangle here. Isn't sine of theta going to be the opposite over the hypotenuse? So we end up having y, because that's the opposite side, over the hypotenuse 1. Again, in a unit circle, the radius would be 1, right? And what is that telling us? Well, y is simply equivalent to the sine of theta. And then finally, if we decide to try tangent theta, isn't tangent by definition the opposite side, which in this case is y, over the adjacent side, which is x? And if we know that y is really, in the unit circle at least, sine of theta, and the x is equivalent to cosine of theta, here is where we come up with that identity that you may have just been told but never understood before. But the bottom line is tangent theta, you see, is always equivalent to the sine of theta divided by the cosine of theta. Tangent is always sine divided by cosine. So now let's put this information together, guys, in context of the coordinate system. Here we have a general coordinate system. Everyone agree, if I'm in quadrant 1 over here, my x is going to be positive, my y is going to be some positive value. Combine that with what we know here, well, that's basically telling us if x is positive here, that means cosine of theta is going to be positive. And remember, y goes with sine of theta. That's going to be positive. And finally, because tangent, remember, is always sine divided by cosine, a positive divided by a positive value means tangent is also positive. So long story short, in the first quadrant, cosine is always positive, sine is always positive, tangent's always positive, right? Let's go over here to quadrant 2. Now you can hopefully see my cosine is going to be negative. My sine is going to be positive. And because of the different signs there, remember, tangent sine divided by cosine, tangent of theta is going to be negative. So again, tangent I know is negative in quadrant 2. Sine is positive in quadrant 2. Cosine is negative in quadrant 2. Let's go on to quadrant 3 down here. Isn't x and y both negative values? Of course they are. So therefore, sine is going to be negative, cosine is negative, and tangent, whenever I do negative divided by negative, I know is going to be positive. Finally, in quadrant 4, since x is positive, we know cosine is going to be positive. Since the y value is going to be negative, sine is negative, because sine and cosine, are opposite signs. I'm going to have a negative divided by positive, so therefore tangent is therefore negative. Okay? Bottom line, guys, you need to understand in which quadrant is cosine positive, which quadrant is sine positive, and which quadrant is tangent positive or negative in a given situation, okay? And you're going to see that play out in the next video when I have to solve the sine, cosine, and tangent functions, equations. All right? See you in class.